Hello out there and welcome to Public Conscience. This is the anti-corruption program produced by the Progressive Impact Organization for Community Development, PRIMOG. PRIMOG is a civil society organization with a mandate to promote good governance, participation, and accountability in Nigeria. I am Adaobi Obiabumo with Esther Bassi.
Welcome to the program.
On Public Conscience on Radio, we seek to evolve a corruption-free society through the amplification of corruption stories reported by our partner media organizations and drawing citizens and government attention for democratic actions against it. We also promote integrity by focusing on rare cases of the display of honesty by public and private individuals in the course of their normal activities. The MacArthur Foundation supports the production of this program.
Today we will be extraying Nigeria's latest drop in the Corruption Perception Index, the federal government's reaction, and the reality of the ranking with regards to the level of corruption in the country.
About 2 weeks ago, the Global Anti-Corruption Coalition Transparency International released the 2021 Corruption Perception Index, CPI. The report was exclusively released by the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLAC, which is a subsidiary of Transparency International.
The CPI is Transparency International's tool for measuring the levels of corruption in the system of various countries around the world. The maximum points a country can score is 100 points, and the least is 0. 0 signifies the worst performing countries, and 100 the best ranked.
Sadly, it is Nigeria's second consecutive year of a downward spiral on the ranking, scoring 24 out of 100 points in the 2021 index, hence dropping 5 places. Nigeria's current 154 ranking out of 180 countries in the 2021 Corruption Perception Index is a drop of 149 in the 2020 index.
Some threads of corruption were used in measuring corruption in Nigeria in the year under review. They include bribery and diversion of public funds. Transparency International also identified nepotistic appointments as against merit and the continued absence of whistleblowing protection law, and among other things.
Today's program will provide opportunity for us to take a closer look at the reasons behind Nigeria's steady and downward spiral in corruption ratings. We will also try to connect the Corruption Perception Index with the reality on ground, as well as seek ways to strengthen our dear nation against corruption. I must remind you that today's discussion concerns everyone. Corruption stands as a barrier to good governance, good roads, good hospitals, critical infrastructure, and so on. But first, let me ask you, how did you receive the current ranking of Nigeria as the second worst country in West Africa in terms of corruption? Do you think the country's current corruption perception ranking is a true reflection of the level of corruption in Nigeria? And do you think Nigeria is currently doing enough to fight against corruption?
Be ready to join us through phone and text messages in the course of the conversation. The WhatsApp phone line to send your message is 0902-265-6167. Please indicate your name and your location when sending your message. This number is for messages only.
Please begin to send your messages as soon as possible to 0902-265-6167.
As the release of the 2021 CPI continues to generate conversation across the length and breadth of the country, it is noteworthy that the development is coming against the backdrop of the federal government's avowed fight against graft.
The President Muhammadu Buhari-led federal government is not also taking the 2021 CPI ranking lightly. Both the Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed, and Chairman of the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC, Dr. Bolaji Owasanoye, faulted the report. They said the rating does not truly reflect the giant strides of the administration in the fight against corruption.
Earlier this year, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, said it secured its highest ever number of conviction within 1 year in 2021 and recovered over 150 billion naira this same year. Similarly, the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC, on Monday had some positive reports to tell. The commission said it recovered and restrained cash and assets valued at 166.51 billion naira from corruption and corrupt persons in the last 2.5 years.
Besides these testaments, it is visible for even the blind to see that Nigeria is losing a lot of its scarce and borrowed resources to public sector corruption. And joining us to talk about these and many more is the Program Officer Anti-Corruption at CISLAC, Samuel Asimi. It's good to have you again here.
Thank you very much for having me.
We also have the Media and Communications Officer at Clean Foundation, Anna White. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Adobe.
We'll start today's conversation with Samuel Asimi. For the benefit of those who do not know much about the CPI, what is Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index and what does it aim to achieve?
Thank you very much, Adobe, and I think it's important we have these conversations so citizens understand the CPI and we can also know how this came about. The CPI, which is the Corruption Perception Index, was actually computed by Transparency International. We started the CPI process in 1995, and ever since then, Transparency International has been releasing annual CPI indexes to rate the corruption levels in different countries. The CPI is a composite data in the sense that we make use of secondary data from different sources. We used 8 sources to measure that of Nigeria, and this was still the same for the previous CPI. What we do with the CPI is the CPI actually measures bribery, nepotism, state capture, excessive red tapes, the criminal justice system, how effective it is in investigating and prosecution issues, and a whole lot of other corruption-related issues. We get data from these secondary sources, we analyze them, then we actually compute them by getting the weighted average of them, and they now become the score of each country. It's some statistics in there, but it's how we actually come to compute the CPI. Generally, if you look at the CPI, it has a score like you mentioned at the beginning, your colleague mentioned, it has a score of 0 and 10. So we have a score, we have a rank. So it's important for citizens to understand this too. So the score actually it's 0. So 0 is of course very corrupt, and 100 is actually very clean. Then it has a rank which is 0 up until 180 for the 2021. So 0 is very clean. Then if you go down to 180, that's very corrupt. So if you look at the 2021 CPI on the score, Nigeria scored 24. Last year, Nigeria scored 25. The previous year, Nigeria scored 26. So you could see Nigeria is actually dropping over 100. If you look at the rank, this at the last CPI, 2021 CPI, Nigeria scored 154. In the previous one, Nigeria scored 149. So you see there's a drop by -5 on the rank. What this shows is we have a lot to do as a nation. We have challenges we need to face, and we all need to actually come to this realization, and all hands should be on deck to ensure that we actually get rid of corruption in the country.
Okay, thank you so much for that explanation. But you talked about secondary sources. These secondary sources of data, are they available?
Yes, so the secondary sources we use, we get the data from the World Bank, Bertelsmann Foundation Transformation Index, World Justice Rule of Law Project, World Economic Forum Survey, and a couple of others. And these credible sources by credible institutions, which interestingly in some cases like the World Bank, Nigeria actually get loans from, which is interesting because they reject the CPI, but then you actually go to the individuals who push out the sources of the CPI to get credits.
I just wanted to establish that because the person listening to you might be wondering, where did you get your data from?
Exactly. So it's important for us to understand that these are the institutions we get our data from, and they're actually very credible. As a matter of fact, at Transparency International, we understand that things are dynamic, and we put our methodology into test. So after the methodology was developed in 1995, due to current realities, it was actually changed in 2012. It was updated, and after the update, we actually conducted an independent audit was conducted on it by the European Joint Research Center, and they found out that it was actually solid, statistically sound, and has a balanced structure. This same audit was conducted in 2007 on the CPI methodology, and the same result was found. So it's just important to lay it out there that it's not just some cooked up data, but this is credible data recognized globally by different institutions and countries.
Okay, from gathering your data, it was discovered that Nigeria dropped on the 2020 rating and it's worsened in 2021. What made the difference in the current rating, and why should citizens be worried?
I think citizens should be worried because if you look at the text released on the CPI, there were lots of issues and challenges faced as a nation. We talk about mismanagement of financial resources. I mean, the audit report actually reflected that. The report by the Auditor General, where we saw billions being spent without appropriation in clear disregard of the Constitution. We saw issues like the clampdown on the freedom of speech, and once you intimidate anti-corruption and human rights defenders, then you're actually trying to go into a less transparent society, because individuals would actually make noise, or individuals would actually point out issues with, say, budget and other matters, and tools that individuals can use to hold governments accountable, like Twitter. When you restrict the spaces, definitely we know we're actually going into an opaque society. We look at issues like the pandemic response. We look at issues like insecurity amongst security agencies, which of course is a result of issues as corruption. This again outside the audit report. A good example, we have issue of the missing weapons in the police armory, which the Auditor General, and not CISLAC, it's important to stress that, actually found out and discovered in his audit report. So I think these are issues and these are challenges we need to come to terms with, and these were issues that actually pulled the country back as a nation.
Quite unfortunate, but again, let's shift our attention to Anna White. What do you make of Nigeria's poor rating on the latest corruption perception index, and do you think it is fair and a balanced rating, and how real can the current perception be?
Well, like it is termed, we're using the word perception here, right? So there is no concrete tie, or absolute take, whatever information that is being provided. But I must say that based on the sources of information that was derived, I would want to pinpoint that it is actually credible, and that Nigerians should actually be worried, because looking at the format that the CPI uses to calculate during the research that is being carried out, we understand that we have 13 different data sources that are being used, to alongside 12 different institutions, do you understand, to carry out this research, or to carry out the calculation. And then on the other hand, except 3 resources have been used in a particular country, it cannot be included in the CPI. And then so far Nigeria has had 8 sources, like it has been stated here, by my colleague seated. So for me, that is credible enough. That is enough information to say that this data is true and that Nigerians should be worried. And I believe that it is actually fair. And if you want to gauge the parameters with which this CPI, is being done, you understand that human rights, or how well human or civic liberties are being protected by a country, will gauge how well they will do, when this index is being calculated. And as it is, let's look at the events that have played out, as at last year in 2021 or 2020, into 2021. There are a lot of human rights abuses, a lot of impunity, and then we keep crying about the shrinking civic spaces. And then how about freedom of information? I mean, Twitter was shut down in Nigeria for a long, and I think that had a huge, impact in the rating that we got for the 2021 TPI. I think that played a whole, lot of role and in the drop, that Nigeria has experienced so far. And I think that we need to do more. We need to begin to question the availability of information, that is being provided, by the government, and then the levels of corruption that is being experienced in the country. A lot of it has to be questioned, and with the shrinking spaces and then the restriction to freedom of information and all, I think that is a whole lot of infringement, and I think that Nigeria will continue to drop if all of these, are not being looked into properly.
So we have a whole lot of work to do if we really want this rating and ranking to improve. So Asimi, despite President Buhari's repeated promises of fighting corruption, we have seen Nigeria's rating drop, like we have established here, to its lowest ebb under his watch. What do you think is currently missing amidst President Buhari's effort?
Just to add to that, if you look at the CPI generally, or if you look at say indexes reports by different credible institutions generally, you'd find something that's consistent across board when it comes to measuring Nigeria, and that's like a steady decline. So it's not just the CPI. Look at the World Freedom House report, you find that. I look at that for Reporters Without Borders, you find that. I look at the World Press Freedom Index, you find that. I look at the Corruption Barometer, which measures the experience of citizens as it relates to corruption, you find a drop. You look at the report from the Auditor General, you find a drop. You look at utterances from the President when he says the legislative arm actually inserted foreign objects or foreign items into the budget, you find a problem. Generally, we have an issue, we have a challenge. In terms of, and this is going into the specifics in response to your questions, in terms of the prosecution of high-profile cases, we have challenges there. So you find issues where, of course, there are convictions, which is nice, but then high-profile convictions, they are scarce. That's an issue, that's a challenge. You find issues around coordination of the anti-graft agencies. And one issue we've been hitting on, and I think it's still important, is the issue of asset recovery. So we still have a huge gap there. So the country has numerous anti-graft agencies, over 5, recovering assets. The anti-graft agencies, the police, the EFCC, the ICPC, the customs, the NDLEA, the civil defense, the Code of Conduct Bureau, you have lots of them. But Nigerians don't even know where these assets are being kept. There is no central database for these assets. You and I can't actually even just go anywhere on the website to see, okay, what's happening to this asset. You drive on the street, you see houses EFCC keep off. You don't know what's the progress with them.
So the federal government is not doing much when it comes to fighting corruption.
Yes, in terms of, and I make it very clear because asset recovery is one of the pillars of the government anti-corruption strategy, and on that the government is actually failing, and that's just one part of it in terms of asset recovery. So you don't have coordination, that's also an issue. So I think you look at it generally, we have issues, we have challenges. MDs don't comply with audit reports. You find that once you open the news and you read the papers, we have different issues in terms of the judiciary. We have issues with transparency in terms of appointment and in terms of disciplinary processes. When it comes to judicial officers, we see that gap there as well. So generally these are issues. Then you also go to legal framework, the presence of the absence of legal frameworks in terms of whistleblower policy, in terms of the asset recovery, which I mentioned. The whistleblower policy which you currently have is domiciled in the Ministry of Finance. That just encourages...
That's just the policy.
Yeah, that just encourages individuals to actually just blow the whistle on funds, and that's it. Now, after blowing the whistle, nothing takes care of you. There's no legal framework to take care of you. We've had cases where people blow the whistle and they're actually victimized. This is an issue because once you don't have that, then nobody gives you tips and you can't work with them. So these are some of the gaps that I can actually highlight from the top of my head, responsible for the drop of Nigeria on the CPI.
Thank you so much for that. On the issue of the legal framework for whistleblowing, we've had lots of advocacy around that, and I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, the president sent a letter to the National Assembly asking the National Assembly to expedite action on pending bills, and the whistleblower and whistleblower protection bill is part of that. So let's quickly get to Anna. You have been doing a lot of job when it comes to the police and security reforms. How much work do you think still needs to be done to reduce corruption perception flowing in from the police and security angle? The police is one of the institutions that readily comes to mind when we think of corruption in Nigeria. I think the NBC did a report, a survey at some point, and the police was fingered in that report. So what do you have to say?
For an organization that works from the supply side, I would say that we have to put in more efforts to continue to train and retrain. The conversation keeps going on, and for us at Clean, when we flag some of these issues coming from the security actors that we work with, we try to have these conversations with their top bodies or make key recommendations that can help to curb or to bring disciplinary measures to some of these incidences that occur. And we are not going to relent, because sometimes it seems like the work you're doing has little or no effect, but it's when it comes to advocacy or trying to make changes, it's a continuous effort. And for us, for 2022, we're looking at putting out more efforts, developing new strategies on how to train and retrain the police officers or the security actors around corruption, and the rest of it. It's big up on transparency and accountability, really, because a lot of information, when it comes to the security actors, a lot of information is being held. And the truth is that when the public are not aware of what you're doing, they tend to raise questions or they begin to develop doubts, right? And when there is doubt, you begin to encounter a lot of issues. So for us, we are seeing how these conversations will keep extending and see how they can get more transparent and have more conversations, regarding these issues as the case may be.
And do you see the police being transparent?
Because I'm not, I don't know, I'm not the Holy Spirit, so I cannot say, but we always believe that when we engage new strategies, that will yield results, no matter how little. And to say the truth, for the period of time that we've worked with the security actors, we've had changes. It might be minute, it might not seem significant, but that's the result. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Open the phone line so you can join the conversation.
Please follow us on our social media platforms at Official Primorg. Primorg is spelled PRIMORG.
And remember that this program is interactive. The WhatsApp phone line to send your message to is 0902 265 6167. That is 0902 265 6167. This number is for messages only. We want to encourage you to send your messages. Now we want to ask you, how did you receive the current ranking of Nigeria as the second worst country in West Africa in terms of corruption? And do you think that Nigeria's current corruption perception ranking is a true reflection of the level of corruption in Nigeria? And do you think Nigeria is currently advancing or retrogressing in the fight against corruption? But I still have my guests, Asimi and Anna White. I would get to Asimi now. How would you rate the contribution of the anti-graft agencies in the anti-corruption fight? And how can their potential be fully maximized to fight public sector corruption going forward?
But I think it's very important you ask on this question, and it's also very important to observe that we at Transparency International acknowledge the efforts of the anti-graft agencies. Oftentimes when this report comes out, it's almost as if the anti-graft agencies are getting knocks and knocks and knocks. I mean, we acknowledge the kind of environments they work in. We know they put in efforts. Can they do more? Yes, they can actually do more. Do they face political interference? Yes, they face political interference. Are they given the requisite resources they need to work? No, they are not having the requisite resources they need to work. Can they do better? Yes, they can do better. So I think generally the anti-graft agencies are making their efforts, but then lots needs to be done. It's important to have convictions it's important to convict Yahoo boys. I think that's actually fine. But then citizens want the real high-profile individuals. I give you a quick example. When the Pandora Papers came out, Nigeria topped the continent with individuals revealed to have flouted one or two legal laws of the country. Now we are not saying these individuals are guilty or not. Our question is just simple. The anti-graft agencies who are mandated by law to tell us if they are guilty or not should actually just do their work. I think that's important. It's a good way to start. Coming to a practical example, we see the issue of fuel scarcity. I don't actually even have much fuel in my car. I'm actually even scared to get fuel because I don't know if I'll get bad fuel. A few weeks ago, we read in the papers that trillions were set aside for subsidy. So as a Nigerian citizen, you're confused. You can't get fuel, it's scarce. You're not even sure if it's a good one you're getting. So I think these are challenges. Citizens want answers, and the anti-graft agencies can actually swing into actions. Those who are culpable should actually face the law. Those who are not are fine to walk away. But I think these are areas we can actually work together, and the anti-graft agencies should actually focus on high-profile cases as well as the low cases they also work on.
You talked about the Pandora Papers, right? That would not have the government react. But we also saw the Panama, right? Did the government react when that was released?
So I try to call them the three Ps. So we've had the Panama, the Paradise, and the Pandora. And each of these have actually showed leaks at different points. During the Panama, the government had set up a commission to actually look into it. As we speak, we're yet to hear anything from the commission. For the Pandora, we've not had any concrete action from the government, and I think these are issues begging for answers from the government by citizens.
Okay, we made all efforts to get government representative Ajuri Ngelali, a presidential aide on public affairs, to be on this program. Unfortunately, we couldn't get him to join us. He has been very responsive to us in the past, and we expect him to respond to us subsequently.
Okay, we have a text message here. Please want to encourage you to always write your name and your location when sending a text message to us. This one says, Nigeria is a country that can never fight against corruption. Instead, adding to the corruption, the EFCC should at least reduce the number of Yahoo in Nigeria. Thank you for that, and I must say, just like Samuel said, the EFCC is doing a whole lot when it comes to Yahoo and what's the other name? Yahoo Plus. But we want to see high-profile corruption cases. Okay, we have another message.
Yes, from Facebook, and this is coming from Maxwell Kumoye from Lagos. We are not fighting corruption, instead we are celebrating it. Take a look at members of Buhari's cabinet and all the picture will be clearer.
Okay, but corruption did not just start today. I must say that we've had it in successive governments, so we really must do much when it comes to fighting corruption. And it is not just the government, individuals. You know, most times when we talk about corruption, we tend to point accusing fingers at the government. Both of you and I, what are we doing in our own space, in our areas of influence? How are we sure that what we are doing is not contributing to corruption in one way or the other?
How much of the corruption in the general public, individual and private person, is measured by TI? I want to believe you focus more on the public sector. So how much of it does TI measure?
Thank you very much. When it comes to research, we have different methodologies and approach being used. So the CPI measures the perception of corruption in the public sector. Other indexes or reports like the Afrobarometer measures the experience of citizens of corruption. So it's important because no one methodology measures everything, but it's good to have all these methodologies together so we can actually understand the issue very well in terms of research. So just to respond to your question, it measures corruption in the public sector.
Just the public sector?
It's public sector corruption. Okay. Yeah, and this includes bribery, nepotism, the criminal justice system, and a whole lot of others. So if you look at the indices being measured, you'd see it actually cuts across all facets of our daily lives.
Thank you for that. Okay, let's quickly get to Anna White again. How can the anti-graft agencies be equipped to fight corruption without compromise?
Well, let me put it this blunt. They should be left alone. I mean, they're supposed to be independent, of the politics or politicking in Nigeria, or independent of whatever political party is in power, or of the government, in power at the time. But I feel like there's a lot of influence, coming from, all of these angles, from people in power, from politicians, and the rest of them. They need to be left alone to do the work that they should do. Like Sami has said, a lot of high-profile individuals are not being tried. And that is why the people will continue to question the credibility of these anti-graft agencies in the first place. And like I had mentioned before, Nigerians see majority of these anti-graft agencies as being corrupt in themselves. So there is no belief, in the existing system. They need to be provided, one, the necessary finances or whatever they need to carry out, the operations that they have to carry out. And then they need to be granted that independence to try people, as whoever that may be, whether high profile, whether low profile, whether Yahoo or no Yahoo, whatever the crimes that cover or these anti-graft agencies cover, they should be allowed to do the work that they're called to do without so much influences from external parties.
Okay, without interference from external parties, I would want to know, what are the chances of the current administration in reducing drastically the massive corruption going on in ministries, departments, and agencies?
Let me take this call. Hello? Your name and where you're calling from?
Yes, sir. In the studio, they are doing a nice job. Kudos to you all. My name is Just Joseph.
Okay, go ahead.
So, positive projections you all are making without the body language of our dear president being in tandem. Go pari passu with all these positive projections, nothing meaningful will be achieved. I hope you will agree with me on this point, because the buck stops in our president's table. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Because the buck stops on our president's table. It is very important that the civil society, that even when we are invited to make statements, to all his state is paid. That is just the pain of our problem. Alright? Our dear president, we should advise him, tell him the whole truth, to sit up. Because if we keep talking from here to Jericho, nothing won't be any chance. Especially with what is going on presently. And about the PMS, and so many other things. I keep talking about.
Okay, you have 30 seconds to round up.
And the National President of Foundation for Correction of Moral Education, I am not happy that Nigerians are not waking up to tell our dear president the whole truth. That's why the country is heading for the precipice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do you agree? Okay, Asimi will respond to that, but you were going to respond to Esther's question.
I go ahead. Oh, okay. So this government came in heavy on corruption. Yeah, but I do not believe that whatever strategies that they've employed, is working. Reason being that we have so much issue of accountability and transparency. And if we don't have these working at all sectors or the MDAs, then we're going to keep having issues, because there's this feeling like they're not responsible, or they don't respond to anyone, right? And so they don't give account to anybody. They don't give information that they are meant to give out. Like we're talking about the Freedom of Information Act. Can you actually access information when you request for it? That's one question we begin to ask. Can you walk into an agency and say, oh, I want information about this, or what was your account for last year? How was money spent? Are those documents going to be released to you? I doubt, because they're going to give you a lot of back and forth. We have had a media experience, so many setbacks, in that regard, and nothing was forthcoming, and then they had to move on. So the government needs to insist on transparency and accountability, because I, for one, working in the sector that I do, and in my organization, can visibly see some of the things that the government, or the efforts, of the government in as regards anti-corruption. And then Sami here talked about the recovered assets. Unfortunately, the Clean Foundation is currently monitoring the phase 3 of the Abacha loot, the $311 million, and what the government is utilizing those funds for, which has gone down to infrastructure. Currently, Abuja Kanu Road, Lagos Ibadan Expressway, Second River Niger Bridge, and then we've been kind of monitoring the progress of works. And truth be told, works are ongoing. But how much does the public know about some of these things? Because I feel like the government, they're hiding so much, or they're refusing to say so much. And when you keep so much in the cocoon, people are trying to unravel what has been hidden. And so there are a lot of questions, and then there are a lot of doubts, and then
there are lots of speculations.
There are a lot of speculations, because what are you using these funds for? Like he said, some buildings are shut down. Okay, we're doing the 311. If I'm not mentioning it here, how much people know that these infrastructures are being carried out? A section, or a very tiny section of the loot, because there are a whole lot of assets being recovered here and there. So what is the transparency? Let's look at accountability and transparency that we don't have. And so long as it's not there, we can't begin to justify or say that the government is trying to reduce corruption.
So if by next year the index there's a drop, Nigerians should not complain, and the government should not complain, because the government is really not transparent enough from what you have said.
No, I mean, they're not, because if a lot of questions have been posed to the president at one point or the other, but the most that we get is silence. I think we need to have more conversations, and where there's a level of maybe even a debate, on how certain funds were spent, by the government, and people can really ask questions. I mean, if you bring these things to the table, people are going to ask less questions.
Samuel, I would like you to respond to the person who called earlier and said the bulk of the work stops on the table of the president. If we really must say that we are fighting corruption, do you agree with him?
No, I think if you look at the inputs from citizens and all, the president leads the nation, so you can't stray away from that fact that he's the commander-in-chief. So if citizens are making this request, then it is what it is in terms of the president, the executive, coordinating the anti-graft agencies. It's also important to also add that aside the executive, the legislative and the judicial arm of government also need to also put in their bits. Issues around appointment and promotion of judges, like I mentioned earlier, things we should look into in terms of parliament, looking at the budgetary processes. We've heard the president come out to tell us foreign lines have been inserted into the budget. So these are issues within the purview of the legislative arm of government that they should also look into. But generally, citizens are not wrong when they call on the president to actually make more efforts, and other individuals in his cabinets and anti-graft agencies to actually improve their efforts in anti-corruption.
Okay, I must emphasize that we made efforts to get a government representative, Ajuri Ngalale, a presidential aide on public affairs, to be on the program. Unfortunately, we couldn't get him to join us. He has been very responsive to us in the past. We expect him to respond to us subsequently. Last year, we had him on the program with you, Asimi, but since he couldn't make it this year, hopefully there are other opportunities for him to respond to the issues we have raised, and the CPI also. But let's quickly get to Samuel again.
Okay, so Samuel, how would you rate the contribution, or by way of solution, what must the government do differently to advance the anti-corruption fight from where it is currently, and what specific aspects of corruption must the government tackle to advance the Nigeria's fight against corruption?
Thank you very much. I think first of all, we need legal frameworks. They need to be beefed up. A legal framework that should focus on whistleblower, proceeds of crime and arrest should be worked upon. Secondly, we would say the financial institutions and the anti-graft agency should actually work together in terms of know your customer KYC policies, customer due diligence policies, and the rest. And this is important because if you look at issues of corruption, issues of money laundering, issues of illicit financial flows, these individuals don't just have these funds in their pockets and run away with them. No, they actually use financial institutions. And you can actually see revelations from ECOWAS, that's JABA, Intergovernmental Task Force on Money Laundering in the region, about how terrorism financing is going through financial institutions in the reports they released months ago. I think it's very important we have coordination between them. The regulatory bodies, CBN, should actually ensure that these financial institutions do the necessary due diligence, KYC, and what they need to do. Looking at the audit reports, Parliament should actually, the National Assembly should be, specifically speaking, should work on the audit report. MDAs that have not been working on their audit report should actually do so to comply. Those who have flouted regulations as prescribed by the constitutions should also work on that. We need coordinations among anti-graft agencies. It's also important for the government to actually recognize the freedom of rights of anti-corruption activists and human rights defenders. Attempts to shrink civic space shouldn't actually be pushed, rather it should be discouraged. Freedoms of individuals should be upheld, because this is very, very important. And I think generally the operational independence of the anti-graft agency should actually be ensured. Political interference should be out. We don't want cases where individuals switch political affiliations and all of a sudden charges against them are actually tuned down or muted. No, these things should go on the way they have been going on. Individuals, irrespective of any affiliation, political, ethnic, religion, region, should actually be investigated fully.
Okay, thank you so much. If you look at the rating and ranking so far, we had the best ranking in 2016. That was where we scored 28, and since then we've dropped from 27 up until 24. Some would say corruption in the public sector, but the people at these MDAs are also individuals and they are citizens. So Anna White, what will be your advice to that person listening to you, that citizen listening to you, on taking up their responsibility of fighting corruption in the public sector?
All right, thank you very much. I think that we all need to begin to look inward. When we talk about corruption and say that Nigeria is corrupt, then we're talking about the individuals. A typical Nigerian leader is a reflection of who a Nigerian is. So when you're saying...
Because we elect our leaders from amongst us.
Yeah. So we're not going to fetch them from Ghana now. They're all Nigerians, as we are. So a typical politician is an average Nigerian. That's the mentality that we have. And like I always say, corruption has become a culture in this country, and then individuals need to begin to look inward to say that this needs to end. It's a conscious effort. I mean, at our own different levels where we operate, you begin to see that there are these tiny things you do that are equally corrupt. You mustn't give it a very big name, or you mustn't capture it in any legal framework for you to understand that these things are corrupt. And then when you begin to deal with individuals, and that's when you begin to know that the situation or the corruption itself is a huge problem. I'll have a long way to go in Nigeria, because you get to an office, maybe a typical government office or even a general office, and for you to just get something done, the processes where you would go through a particular individual would be so hellish, because they are making requirements that you're probably not able to provide. I mean, that's in Nigeria now. The person is not a politician. I mean, this is me and you.
And once the person is frustrated, you look for an alternative. How do I bribe this particular official? So
a lot of Nigerians already feel like bribe is normal. So they don't even call it bribe anymore. We call it sorting. As in, you give it a very good term. Like, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. You know, people are already doing that. In fact, you're not even requesting. Someone come to meet you, like, okay, madam, waiting be your court. Make I add them now. So, no, it's the truth. People are no longer waiting for you to request, because they feel like it's already enough. So you should know. So they're even asking you, madam, tell us your court to make we add them now so that we know where they drag tomorrow. So
we need to change that narrative.
Yeah, we need to change that narrative because we can't keep holding politicians or the government responsible for all the ills that we experience in the country. I mean, this, when you trickle it down, it is you and I, it is everybody. The politician is somebody's mother, somebody's brother, it is you, it is I, it is the next person next door. So we need to begin to take responsibility and begin to decisively do the right thing.
Thank you. We need to do the right thing. We really must go, Esther, because our time is up.
Please visit the news page of our website, primognews.org. That is primognews.org for all the details of our reports and interviews. Visit our website www.primog.org to get all the information about Primog.
And you can watch our videos on Primog TV, our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to get reminders when we have a new post. We sincerely appreciate our guest, the Program Officer Anti-Corruption at CISLAC, Samuel Asimi. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And also the Media and Communications Officer at Clean Foundation, Anna White, for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Public Conscience is supported by the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, committed to building a more just, verdant, and peaceful world. Get more information about the foundation on its website, macfound.org.
Join us again here next week for another episode of Public Conscience. And remember to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram at Official Primog. I am Esther Bassi.
And remember that birth registration and birth certificates are both free if your child is under 18. Help us stop the corruption in birth registration and do not pay for birth certificates. Also remember that you can give us information or hints on corrupt acts through our phone 0902-265-6167 or info@primewalk.org. I am Adelbi Obiabumo. Stay safe.